It's time for the latest edition of What's the Word, the radio broadcast that brings you news of our Area 1 community. I'm Army Staff Sergeant Crystal Crawford, and now here's the host of What's the Word, Mr. Frank Fisher of the USAG Red Cloud and Area 1 Public Affairs Office.
Thanks, Sergeant Crawford. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of What's the Word. Today, we look at what you and I in the Area 1 community can do to help undercut terrorists, spies, and other threats to our security. One part of that comes by watching for signs of them and reporting what we see. Another big part is making sure we're careful about what we say, how we carry ourselves, and what places we go and don't go. That's so that we don't make things easy for our adversaries. I'm sure you know that in this year alone we've seen many high-profile terrorist attacks in many parts of the world. But even without that kind of thing, we in the military community have to be, always, all the time, especially careful about foreign agents, spies. They are out there. And one of their many methods is to try to get friendly with you, the member of our military community, active duty, civilian, or family member, or to eavesdrop on what you and your friends are saying. They're fishing for any little bit or piece of information that might help them. A bit here, a piece there, and eventually they've pulled in enough to connect the dots, figure things out that can help them against us. In the course of this month, we in Area 1 have been highlighting this subject of threats from terrorists and other adversaries. We've been doing that on the Area 1 Facebook and Twitter pages and in the Morning Comm newspaper. We chose this month because this August happens to be the Army's 7th annual Anti-Terrorism Awareness Month. So in recent weeks, we've been reminding you, for example, that if you see something, say something. If you think you see the bad guys up to no good, report it. We've also said avoid careless talk. Safeguard our mission. We've reminded you that good OPSEC, you know what that means, operational security, applies also to emails, to texting, to everything. And we've said know the signs of suspicious packages and other mail. And we've also said that if you're planning to travel, travel smart and stay alert. We'll hear a good deal more about that later. Knowing how to hinder the bad guys is important all the time, regardless of the month or year. But because this is Anti-Terrorism Awareness Month, we wanted to make sure that we also talked about it on this edition of What's the Word. So, here to give us expert insight into the topic is our guest. He is Mr. Michael Heberer, Anti-Terrorism Officer with the U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud and Area 1. He is a retired U.S. Army officer who served in the military police branch, and he has since then been working as the Garrison Anti-Terrorism Officer. Mr. Heberer, first off, just what is AT awareness? What does that term mean?
Sir, let's start with, as we all know, acts of terrorism can occur anywhere at any time. Preventing these acts of terrorism is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job, and everyone has a role in this job. With anything that we do all the time, we become complacent. For this reason, the Department of the Army has dedicated the month of August to AT awareness in an effort to get leadership and members of the community refocused in this prevention. Anti-terrorism is a proactive approach to help disrupt and prevent acts of terrorism. This is done in many ways. It starts with the basics. That is, soldiers conducting AT Level 1 training. This training helps to educate soldiers on how to make themselves a harder target and how to spot things that are out of the ordinary. Changing security postures and procedures is another part of this effort. And we do this with changing up how we check people coming into and out of the installation and on a random basis. The harder we can make ourselves, the harder the target we can make the enemy to attack, the safer we become. And as we've seen over the last year, people have decided to make attacks on locations that are less hard, i.e. nightclubs, cafes, and that shows that the targets they really want to attack are doing the measures to make it more difficult for them to attack, so they choose. So it's important with this training that soldiers practice this AT awareness approach even when they go downtown, not just here on the installation. So it's a vital part to the protection. We use it in op orders for Army operations, but it's a day-to-day thing that we are in nowadays.
And I know that you're going to have a lot of very specific tips to give our audience, which is, of course, not only soldiers, but civilians, family members who are part of the Area 1 community, and that's very good. And we'll hear more about that after the break.
We're back with What's the Word Hour, and here's Frank Fisher.
Thank you, Sergeant Crawford. Today on What's the Word, we're talking about what you and I can do to help undercut terrorists, spies, and other threats to our security. Our guest is Mr. Michael Heberer, the Garrison Anti-Terrorism Officer here in Area 1. Mr. Heberer, we've been telling our listeners about the slogan, if you see something, say something. So what specifically are we talking about when we say that?
Mr. Fisher, I mean, the fact is there's personnel dedicated to helping prevent attacks 24 hours a day. However, they're limited on personnel and resources. These agencies rely on members of the community to understand what looks right, feels right, within their environment that they live in daily. So, for example, if you're coming in the front gate of the installation every day at a certain time, and you kind of know what the front gate looks like that time of the day. So if you see a vehicle parked there that looks unusual and a person taking pictures of the gate, obviously that's something you should report. So we say if you see something, say something. So report what you see to the military police. They will investigate and or hand it over to the agency that is better suited for that investigation. So that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for all members of the community to be the sensors for intelligence, for lack of a better word, of things that are out of place, so we can investigate and prevent potential terrorist attacks, theft, and or espionage. So that goes with anything. So from seeing someone leave a backpack in the food court, to someone taking pictures of the gate, to someone loading Army equipment into their POV. So that's what we mean by see something, say something. Easiest thing to do is report it to your local military police station. Let the military police do the initial investigation and pass it on to the appropriate authorities.
That's a very good way of expressing it. You use the term sensors, and really, tell me if I'm right or wrong here. It's in effect saying to members of our community, help be the eyes and ears of the people who can take action on these things. Is that correct?
It is. It's exactly correct. We're not asking you to go out and confront anything that looks unusual or suspicious. Simply observe what it is, as much detail as possible, and contact your local military police. Doesn't involve tailing people or investigating suspicious packages on your own. Let's get the qualified experts in, whoever that may be, to do that for us.
That's on one level, that's a very comic scenario to imagine, a member of our community trying to kind of play the law enforcement and investigative role that they're not trained for, qualified for, or even authorized for in many instances. And on another level, of course, it's absolutely serious that people just kind of stay in their lane and come forward with the information and let the professionals take it, the experts take it from there.
It's very, very true. In many cases, it can be very dangerous for people to go above and beyond other than observing and reporting. And for the safety of the community, we're only asking that you observe and report. And when I say observe, doesn't mean you need to stand there and stare at something and call on a cell phone. Obviously, just make note of what you saw and get to a safe place and report it.
If someone feels that they can take, let's say, cell phone footage, that they can take video with their cell phone of something that's going on without being detected doing it. Is it advisable that they try that or not?
No, it is not advisable. One, we have restrictions on the use of cell phones on the installation to begin with, so you could be construed to be the suspicious one. Also, based on that, you draw attention to yourself by even taking photos. It's not commonly seen across the installation. In Korea, it's generally not a bad thing to take photos. Other countries you travel to, taking photos of people is looked very down on, so to speak. So it's also being aware of where you're at taking photos.
What about the possibility that some members of the community seeing something that their instinct tells them is maybe not right, that does look out of place, that does look not quite right, but they're not sure? And I can imagine at least some people may be hesitating, being afraid that they report it and it turns out to have been nothing ultimately, and they might feel, oh, I don't want to waste the MP's time, I don't want to waste people's time and send them on a wild goose chase. What would you say to people who might have that hesitation?
I would say that the smallest minuscule piece of information can oftentimes be very critical to understanding the overall situation.
Well, there's a very important point, isn't it? And it makes me think of what we were saying at the start of the broadcast. The bad guys can get somewhere. Eventually, they can connect the dots with just one or two little things added to another and to another over time. And similarly, it can help us to have any piece of information brought forward. Well, we'll be back after the break.
And I'll be right back with your weather, exchange rate, and gas prices. We're back with What's the Word Hour, and here's Frank Fisher.
Thanks, Sergeant Crawford. If you're just joining us, we're talking about what you and I can do to help undercut terrorists, spies, and other threats to our security. Our guest is Mr. Michael Heberer, the Area 1 Garrison Anti-Terrorism Officer. Mr. Heberer, is there anything we should keep in mind to make our travel safer?
So travel always presents some increased risks, obvious based on a change of environment, unfamiliar environment, potential language barriers, different cultural norms. So what I'd like to first talk about is to point out that all DoD personnel are required to do an individual anti-terrorism plan. It's called an IATP. It's a website process. It's required by PACOM and DoD for all DoD personnel on official travel and all military personnel assigned in PACOM on an unofficial travel requirement. This is not required for travel back to the U.S. or its territories. However, all OCONUS travel, overseas travel, this is a requirement. The great thing about this tool is it's also a way for the commands to track who is in what country or in what location. If there's a man-made or natural disaster occurring there, we can easily do a data poll to see who's there and reach out to them, make sure they're okay, or advise the State Department of those personnel that are there. This web-based application requirement, once you complete the process, it goes off to a commander in your chain of command, and the level of that commander is based on the FPCON, the Force Protection Condition to the country you're visiting. The higher the FPCON level, the higher level officer in your chain of command has to sign that travel. This process, when you conduct this process online, there's a ton of links to additional information to help make your travel much safer. There's links to the State Department website, which will give you if the crime at the location you're going to is high, medium, or low, the terrorist threat, all kinds of great information about the country or location where you're going. It also gives you a link where you can sign up on the State Department website that you're traveling to this location, to also allow the State Department to be aware of you coming. And you can set it up where they send you text to your cell phone number on protests in those locations, or updated security or travel warnings to the location you're traveling to. So a lot of great stuff on this site as far as information about where you're going. And with this information allows us, after we've done some AT Level 1 training, to better make decisions on public transportation, where we're going to stay, what floor we're going to stay, should I travel with a buddy. It also provides important phone numbers to regional security officer at the embassy, or an embassy number where you're going, law enforcement numbers, that kind of stuff. So other things we can do when you travel, obviously, more you know about where you're going. The old adage, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So think about where you're going, what you should bring to wear to blend in more. If you're going to, how loud it's culturally normal for people to talk in public, try to mimic their, or be lower so you're less noticeable. You don't have to speak the language where you're going, but you can observe signs. Even on the subway here in Korea, there's signs for this seat's for a pregnant woman, or this one's for an elderly person. Simply following cultural norms draws less attention to you. Less attention is always better.
You mentioned FP-Con, Force Protection Condition. For those of our listeners who may not be affiliated with the military, what in lay terms, how can we tell them what that is exactly? So
authorities look at the threat to an area or a location, and if it's feasible for this threat to occur, and they set force protection condition levels, which drives security requirements to help mitigate those threats. So in the States, normally, I believe currently it's FP, Force Protection Condition Alpha across the U.S. Overseas locations, it's much different, i.e. Yemen. I think currently it's Force Protection Condition Charlie Plus or Delta there right now. So each country has its own force protection condition, and it's relevant to understand it, what that means and what it is in each area.
So those different levels have a letter of the alphabet that corresponds to the various levels, and those are adjusted by the authorities according to what they know about the security situation.
Yes, sir. And also on this IATP website, you can see travel warnings and travel restrictions by the State Department.
Great. Thank you. We'll be back after the break.
We're back with What's the Word Hour, and here's Frank Fisher.
Thanks, Sergeant Crawford. If you're just joining us, we're talking about what you and I can do to help undercut terrorists, spies, and other threats to our security. And our guest is Mr. Michael Heberer. He is the Area 1 Garrison Anti-Terrorism Officer. Mr. Heberer, over the last many months, I've had these informational pop-ups on my computer, and they tell me about things like gate closures, severe weather, road conditions. What is this system, and what should our listening audience know about it?
Yeah, so approximately a year ago, we were fielded the EM2P ad hoc, which is in layman's term, it's a web-based mass warning notification system. It allows the garrison to get timely information out to help mitigate, whether it be inconvenience or whether it be enhancing someone's security. Prime tool for this kind of system is in response to an active shooter, to get the message out that, hey, stay away from this area, it's dangerous. So it's a rapid means to, web-based means to get important information out to the majority of the community. It's capable of sending you a pre-recorded message to your phone, sending your phone text, calling your DSN phone with, landline phone with pre-recorded message, sending you an email, and also having a pop-up on all DoD computer screens within a geographical area. The system can be used to target a certain geographical location, and if you're in it, it can be used to target certain units or camps within Area 1. And we use it for a number of different things based on what's going on, gate closures. If we have an incident, a traffic accident at a gate, we can use it to send that information out so people can divert themselves to a gate that's open. The critical thing with this system, though, is people have to self-register. So without self-registering your phone number, your email, your DSN line, us pushing this information out never will get to you. There's a app for your smartphone too, where you can receive these, and until you deregister, you can get these anywhere in the world. I was recently back in the States on vacation and receiving these pop-ups on my smartphone from here in Area 1. 2ID actually has an op order that was published last year requiring all E7 Sergeant First Class and above to self-register in EM2P ad hoc. So it's critical. If you look on the bottom of your screen, on your computer screen, there's a little purple globe down in your tray. If you right-click on that, you can update your information, and it uses your CAC login. And you go in there, you can put in your cell phone number, your DSN phone number, different means of communication. You can select which ones you want to use. Like for myself, my DSN phone sits right next to my computer. So do I need my DSN phone to ring and my computer screen have a pop-up and my personal phone ring at the same time too? So my personal preference is I turned off my DSN phone because if I'm sitting there, I'm logged into a computer. But all those means are important. Your personal cell phone, your home phone is critical because, as we know, bad things don't always happen during duty hours. So it's important that you go in there and update your information.
Well, thank you. I'll just restate one thing that you said a moment ago, and that is that this system, which I, of course, use as a member of the garrison, I benefit from having these pop-ups and text messages bombard at the same moment virtually. It's a very effective system, but it's only as good as the number of people registered. If one is not registered, one will not receive this. So it's an important reminder to our military community members to go ahead and get registered for this. Well, our thanks to today's guest, Mr. Michael Heberer, Garrison Anti-Terrorism Officer with U.S. Army Garrison Red Cloud and Area 1. What's the Word airs every other Thursday at 3 p.m. here on AFN-KC. I'm Frank Fisher of the Area 1 Public Affairs Office, and I've been your host for What's the Word, handing back now to my What's the Word broadcast partner, AFN-KC DJ, Army Staff Sergeant Crystal Crawford. Until next time, thank you for joining us. Here's Sergeant Crawford.
And as Mr. Fisher said, thanks for joining us for this edition of What's the Word.